The morning sun casts golden light across the peaceful world of Kepler 4, for to be Captain Park. Minho pressed his hands against the cold metal of the observation window, watching the alien landscape come alive below. The purple grass swayed in gentle winds, and crystal-clear rivers wound through valleys, dotted with stone cities that sparkled like jewels. Beautiful, isn't it, sir? Lieutenant Kim Sola joined him at the window, her tablet displaying rows of data about the world below. The Cathara population has grown by 12% in the last 10 years. No wars, no pollution, no signs of self-destruction. They're everything we hoped they would become. Minho nodded slowly, his eyes following a group of Cathara children, playing near a garden. The aliens looked almost human, but moved with a graceful, flowing motion that reminded him of dancers. Their large, luminous eyes reflected curiosity about everything around them. They had no idea that human ships hung invisible in space above them, watching and protecting. 200 years, Minho said quietly. 200 years since humanity decided to become guardians instead of destroyers. The Cathara are living proof that we can do better. The Terran Confederation had learned hard lessons from humanity's violent past. Wars had nearly destroyed Earth before people realized that strength should protect the weak, not crush them. The Sanctuary Doctrine became humanity's new way: find developing species and shield them from the dangers of the galaxy, while they grew strong enough to protect themselves. The Cathara were special. In 15 years of watching over them, Minho had seen them develop art, music, and philosophy that brought tears to his eyes. They built cities that worked with nature instead of destroying it. They solved problems through discussion, rather than violence. They were everything humanity wished it had been in its early days. Communications Officer Li Guan suddenly looked up from her station, her face pale. "Sir, priority transmission coming in from Confederation Command. We have an unknown fleet entering the system." The peaceful atmosphere on the bridge vanished instantly. Minho felt ice form in his stomach. "How many ships?" "Sensors show 47 vessels, sir. They're not broadcasting any identification codes." Jiwan's fingers danced across her controls. "Configuration suggests heavy military presence." Minho's jaw clenched. In his 15 years of service, protecting the Cathara, no unauthorized ships had ever entered their system. The Galactic Council respected humanity's protection zones, even if they didn't always agree with them. Whatever was coming wasn't here by accident. "All stations, go to stealth mode immediately," Minho ordered, his voice sharp with command authority. "I want us completely invisible. Not even a photon escapes our holes. The Cathara's safety depends on absolute secrecy." The bridge lights dimmed. Too red as the Terra's Promise activated its stealth systems. Around them in space, 6 other human ships did the same, becoming ghosts watching over their protected world. Lieutenant Kim Sola studied her long-range sensors, her expression growing more worried by the second. "Sir, the fleet is maintaining formation and heading directly for Cathara population centers. Their ships are sleek, efficient-looking. I've never seen this design before." "Weapon signatures?" Minho asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Massive energy weapons, sir. Capture nets, containment beams, transport systems designed for moving large numbers of living beings." Sola's voice nearly broke. "These aren't exploration ships, sir. They're built for harvesting." The word hung in the air like poison. Harvesting, the galaxy's polite term for slavery, for treating intelligent beings like crops to be gathered and sold. Minho had read reports about harvester fleets, but they usually targeted worlds without protection, species too primitive to fight back or call for help. "They know about our protection," Minho said, more to himself than his crew. "They know the Cathara are under human guard, and they're coming anyway." Below on the planet's surface, Cathara families were beginning their daily activities. Children ran through gardens while their parents tended to art projects that would take years to complete. None of them had ever seen violence. Their language didn't even have words for concepts like slavery or conquest. "Sir," Gyuan said quietly, "the lead ship is broadcasting on general frequencies. They're claiming legal salvage rights under Section 47 of the Galactic Maritime Code. They say any species that hasn't achieved faster than light travel is fair game for resource acquisition." Minho's hands formed fists. The Galactic Maritime Code was an ancient law created by aggressive species to justify their predatory behavior. Technically, it was still legal, though most civilized worlds ignored it. The fact that this fleet was invoking it meant they planned to take the Cathara, regardless of human protection. "Estimated time until they reach the planet?" Minho asked. 6 hours, sir," Sola replied. "Should I prepare a warning transmission?" Minho stared down at the peaceful world below. In 6 hours, everything would change. The Cathara's age of innocence was about to end, and someone was gambling that humanity wouldn't risk galactic war to stop it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "No transmissions yet," Minho said finally. "First, we find out exactly who we're dealing with. Then we decide how hard we're going to hit them." The Zephyrian fleet fell from the sky like hungry metal birds. Admiral Song Hanwoo gripped the railing of his command bridge aboard the Eternal Guardian, watching in horror as 47 alien ships surrounded the peaceful Kithra world. The ships were dark gray, with sharp edges, built for one purpose: only taking people from their homes. "Energy nets deploying over the eastern continent," reported Lieutenant Park Sumi, her voice shaking. "They're surrounding entire cities at once." Song watched the main screen as glowing nets dropped from the Zephyrian ships. The nets were huge, covering areas the size of human cities. Below them, Kithara people ran in panic, not understanding what was happening. They had never seen war or violence. This was their first taste of true terror. "Sir, we're receiving transmission from the Zephyrian commander," Communications Officer Kim Jae-in announced. "They're broadcasting legal documents." A alien voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "This is Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Harvest Fleet. We claim legal rights to this world under Section 47 of the Galactic Maritime Code. Any species that cannot achieve spaceflight is available for resource collection. Do not interfere." Song's jaw tightened. Section 47 was an old law that most civilized species ignored. It said that primitive species could be taken as slaves if they couldn't defend themselves. The law was cruel and outdated, but technically still legal in galactic courts. "They've done this before," observed Captain Choi Naeong from her monitoring station on the planet's surface. "Look at how organized they are. This isn't their first harvest." The screens showed Zephyrian soldiers moving through Kithara settlements with cold efficiency. They separated families without hesitation. Parents were pushed into large containment areas, while children were loaded into smaller pods. The young Kithara cried and reached for their families through energy barriers that kept them apart. "How many are they taking?" Song asked quietly. "All of them, sir," Choi replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sensors indicate they plan to empty the entire planet. 200,000 Kithara, men, women, children, elderly, everyone." Song immediately sent an emergency message to Confederation Command on Earth. Within 3 hours, the response arrived. His orders were clear: observe and document only. Pursue diplomatic solutions. Do not engage in military action under any circumstances. The Confederation could not risk a galactic war over one planet. Song read the orders twice, then looked at the live video feed from the surface. A small Cathara girl, no older than 6 in human years, pressed her tiny hands against the energy barrier of her containment pod. Her parents stood 20 meters away behind their own barrier, crying and calling her name. She couldn't understand why they wouldn't come to her. Sir, Commander Yoon Doyen approached carefully. The crew is asking if we're going to help them. I know what they want, Song said, not taking his eyes off the screen. And I know what our orders are. For 3 long days, the human fleet remained hidden in space, watching and recording. The Zephyrians worked methodically, loading Kythera onto their ships like cargo. They didn't treat them as people, just as valuable resources to be transported and sold. On the 2nd day, Captain Choi sent disturbing reports from her surface monitoring equipment. Admiral, they're conducting medical examinations on the captives, taking blood samples, scanning their bodies, testing their strength. Medical examinations, Song asked, though he suspected the truth. They're checking which ones will be best for different types of work. Heavy labor, delicate tasks, breeding programs. Choi's voice broke slightly. They're treating them like livestock. The worst came on the 3rd day. Surveillance equipment captured footage of Zephyrian scientists performing experiments on Kythera children. They were testing pain tolerance, measuring intelligence, checking how fast the children could learn simple tasks. The young Kythera screamed and cried, but the aliens showed no emotion at all. Song stared at the footage for a long time. The child from earlier was among those being tested. She had stopped crying and now sat in silent terror, her large eyes filled with confusion and fear. Sir, Lieutenant Park, Sumi said softly, the crew is requesting permission to attack. They're ready to disobey orders if necessary. Song looked around his bridge. Every human face showed the same expression, rage mixed with shame. They were soldiers sworn to protect the innocent, but their own government was forcing them to watch genocide happen. I know what they're feeling, Song said quietly. I feel it too. He walked to his command console and placed his hand on a red button that hadn't been touched in over 200 years. The emergency military beacon, a signal that told all Confederation forces that the rules no longer applied. This is Admiral Song Han-woo, to all Confederation military units. He broadcast on maximum power. I am requesting Code Black authorization. The safety protocols are suspended. The diplomatic approach has failed. He paused, looking one more time at the screen showing Kythera children in alien laboratories. The gloves are coming off. Fleet Admiral Kim Tae-young sat in his command chair aboard the massive battleship Human Resolve, reading the message from Earth's Confederation Senate. The words were simple, but carried enormous weight. Remove the Zephyrian presence by any means necessary. All restrictions lifted. All protocols suspended. For 200 years, humanity had kept their most dangerous weapons hidden. The galaxy saw them as peaceful guardians who preferred talking to fighting. Most alien species believed human military technology was basic and limited. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral, Commander Park Sun-mi called from her position at the weapons control station. All 30 ships are in position. Target locks confirmed on 47 Zephyrian vessels. Tae-young studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships hung in space around the Kythera world like vultures around a dying animal. 23 of their ships were harvesters, large vessels packed with stolen Kythera families. Were military escorts with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Remember, Tae-young announced to his fleet, precision is everything. We destroy every military ship completely. We do not damage the harvesters. Not one Kythera gets hurt because of our actions. Lieutenant Oh Seung-min looked up from his sensor station. Sir, the harvesters have nearly 200,000 Kythera on board. Men, women, children, all packed into cargo holds like animals. Tae-young's hands tightened on his chair arms. The Kythera were gentle people who had never known war. Now they were trapped in alien ships, terrified and confused, waiting to be sold as slaves across the galaxy. All ships, prepare weapon systems, Tae-young ordered. Activate quantum disruptor arrays. Load antimatter torpedoes. Today, We show the galaxy what happens when someone hurts our people. The human fleet suddenly became visible as their stealth systems shut down. 30 ships materialized around the Zephyrians like ghosts becoming real. But these weren't the small, peaceful vessels the galaxy expected from humanity. These were war machines built with technology that violated 17 different galactic treaties. Sir, the Zephyrians are demanding we retreat, Communications Officer Han Mingi reported. They say we're outnumbered and outgunned. Tell them, Tae-young replied coldly. They're about to find out what outgunned really means. The battle began when the first quantum disruptor beam fired from the human resolve. The weapon cut through the largest Zephyrian military ship's shields like they were made of paper. The alien vessel simply disappeared in a flash of light, leaving only empty space where it had been. 29 other human ships fired at the same moment. Antimatter torpedoes streaked across space, each one carrying enough power to crack a moon in half. Zephyrian military vessels exploded one after another, their hulls unable to withstand weapons that turned matter into pure energy. Targets eliminated, Park Sun-mi reported with professional calm. All military vessels destroyed. Harvesters are undamaged. The entire fight had lasted 14 minutes. 24 Zephyrian warships had been turned into expanding clouds of glowing atoms. Not a single human vessel had been scratched. But the real surprise came next. Commander Lim Ji-hoon's voice crackled over the communication system from his intelligence ship, Silent Watch. Admiral, Operation Clean Sweep is active. Hidden platforms throughout the sector are engaging Zephyrian installations. Across 50 light-years of space, weapons platforms that humanity had secretly placed over decades suddenly came alive. Every Zephyrian military base, every shipyard, every weapons factory found themselves under attack by systems they had never detected. The platforms were small and had been disguised as space debris or hidden inside asteroids. But each one carried enough firepower to level a city. They struck, simultaneously, coordinated by quantum communication systems that made their assault impossible to stop or escape. Sir, Han Minji said, her voice filled with amazement. We're receiving surrender transmissions from Zephyrian Command. They're asking us to stop the attacks. Some of them are. They're begging. Tae-young activated his communication system, setting it to broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species with subspace receivers would hear his words. This is Fleet Admiral Kim Tae-young of the Terran Confederation, he announced. The Zephyrian Empire crossed a line when they attacked the Kithara. We have erased that line and drawn a new one. He paused, looking at the tactical display showing Zephyrian installations burning across multiple star systems. Release all Kithara immediately. Withdraw from every developing world in this sector. Any Zephyrian ship found near a primitive species will be destroyed without warning. This is not a negotiation. This is your only chance to survive. The response came within minutes. Zephyrian harvester ships began opening their cargo holds, releasing confused but unharmed Kithara onto transport beams that carried them safely to the planet's surface. The alien fleet then turned and fled toward the edge of the system at maximum speed. Sir, Lim Ji-hoon reported from Silent Watch. Zephyrian military installations across the sector have been neutralized. Their fleet strength is down by 98%. In 72 hours, the Zephyrian Empire went from being a galactic power to a collection of refugees begging for mercy. They had learned that humanity's peaceful nature had limits, and crossing those limits brought consequences that entire civilizations couldn't survive. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Delegates from 200 different species shouted and argued, while holographic displays showed the smoking remains of Zephyrian military installations. Representative Yu Seo-jin stood calmly at the human podium, surrounded by angry alien faces, demanding answers. This is an outrage, screamed the tall, blue-skinned Altarian delegate, his forearms waving wildly. Humanity violated the Warfare Convention. Your weapons are illegal under 17 different treaties. You committed genocide. Seojin looked at him with cold eyes. We prevented genocide. Your laws allowed it to happen. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had spent centuries hiding behind legal language were suddenly faced with someone who ignored their carefully written rules. Chancellor Bothan, a massive creature with gray skin and 6 eyes, slammed his ceremonial hammer on the podium repeatedly. Order! Order in this chamber, Bothan roared. Humanity will face immediate sanctions for these actions. These protection zones you're creating around primitive worlds are acts of war. Captain O.G. Sung, humanity's military representative, stepped forward and activated a large holographic display. 17 different worlds appeared in the air above the delegates, each one showing primitive species going about their daily lives. These are developing civilizations in our sector of space, Ji-sung announced clearly. As of today, they are all under human protection. Any species that approaches these worlds with hostile intentions will be eliminated completely. The delegate, a creature that looked like a giant insect, clicked its mandibles angrily. You cannot rewrite galactic law. These rules have existed for thousands of years. Seojin smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. We're not rewriting your laws. We're ignoring them. Your legal system failed to protect innocent people. Our system won't fail. You're threatening the entire galaxy, shouted another delegate. No, Seojin replied quietly. We're promising to protect those who can't protect themselves. If that threatens you, perhaps you should ask yourself why. The council's session ended with threats and demands for economic sanctions against humanity. The human delegation simply packed up their materials and walked out. Within hours, Earth announced its complete withdrawal from all galactic institutions. But the real test came just 3 weeks later. The Mordok Raiders, a group of violent pirates, decided to test humanity's new protection zones. They attacked a primitive world in the Vega system, planning to steal resources and capture slaves, just like they had done for decades. The planet's inhabitants were simple farmers who had just discovered how to work with metal. They had no weapons beyond basic tools and no way to call for help. The Mordok ships landed and began burning villages, exactly as they had done on dozens of other worlds. 40-7 minutes after the attack began, 6 human warships appeared in Vega's orbit. The battle was not really a battle at all. The human ships didn't demand surrender or try to capture prisoners. They simply destroyed every Mordok vessel in the system with the same cold efficiency they had shown at Kepler-4 for 2b. Plasma beams cut through pirate ships like knives through paper. In less than 10 minutes, the entire raiding fleet was gone, but the humans didn't land on the planet or try to make contact with the natives. Instead, they broadcast emergency medical frequencies and farming advice in the local language, then disappeared back into space. The message was clear. We will protect you, but we won't interfere with your natural development. Admiral Jung Soyoung oversaw similar operations at Proxima Centauri and Wolf 359 over the following weeks. Each time, aggressive species tried to test human resolve. Each time, the attackers simply vanished without a trace, leaving only debris and frightened survivors who spread word across the galaxy. Humanity meant what they said. The Galactic Council passed emergency resolutions condemning human actions. They declared economic sanctions and trade restrictions. They demanded that humanity return to diplomatic negotiations and respect galactic law. Humanity ignored all of it. Human patrol ships continued their routes around protection zones, invisible to most sensors, but always watching. Species that had spent centuries raiding primitive worlds suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering if human warships were nearby. The Krellian Syndicate, one of the galaxy's largest slave trading organizations, simply stopped operating in human-controlled space. When asked why, their leader said quietly, "Profit isn't worth extinction." Fear spread faster than any official communication. Stories traveled through spaceports and trading stations about entire fleets disappearing when they approached protected worlds. Some species claimed the stories were exaggerated, but none were willing to test them personally. Chancellor Bothan called for an emergency session to discuss the human problem. Only half the usual delegates showed up. Many species were too busy changing their trade routes and military policies to attend meetings about laws that no longer seemed to matter. "We must do something," Boson declared to the reduced assembly. "Humanity is destroying the galactic order." The old Centaurian delegate, one of the few species older than humans, stood slowly and spoke in a tired voice. "Perhaps the galactic order needed to be destroyed. How many innocents died while we debated legal procedures? In the end, no action was taken against humanity." The council couldn't agree on what to do about a species that had the power to enforce their will, and the determination to use it. Fear had indeed become the new law, and for the first time in galactic history, the innocent were truly safe. 5 years had passed since the Zephyrian fleet tried to harvest the Cathara people. Ambassador Cho Min-seok stood in the grand reception hall of the Terran embassy on Earth, watching as the first Cathara delegation stepped off their newly built spacecraft. The sight filled him with pride and wonder. The Cathara had grown so much. In just 5 years, under human protection and guidance, they had developed technology that should have taken them centuries to discover. Their ship was beautiful, carved from a single piece of crystalline metal, and powered by clean energy systems that barely disturbed space around them. Elder Yanel, the Kithara leader, walked forward with the graceful movements that made his species so elegant to watch. In his four-fingered hands, he carried a simple piece of paper covered in bright colors and childish drawings. Ambassador Cho Kyanel said, in perfect human standard, his large silver eyes showing deep emotion, "Our children drew this for you. They wanted to show how they see your people." Cho took the artwork carefully. The drawing showed a blue-green planet surrounded by white shapes with wings. At first he thought they were birds, but then he realized what they really were: human starships, drawn by a child who had never seen war, only protection. "Before your people came to watch over us," Kyanel continued, "our children thought the sky held only weather, rain, wind, and storms. Now they know it holds guardians who keep us safe while we sleep." Cho felt tears forming in his eyes. The simple drawing represented everything humanity had hoped to achieve when they started the Sanctuary Doctrine. They had become protectors instead of conquerors, guardians instead of destroyers. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. Species that had been primitive just a few years ago were now taking their first steps into space, always under the invisible watch of human patrol ships. At the Confederation War College on Mars, Admiral Park Min-ho stood before a class of new officer candidates. He had been promoted after his service, protecting the Kithara world, and now his job was teaching the next generation of human guardians. The classroom was filled with young men and women who had volunteered to spend their lives protecting species they would probably never meet face to face. They studied alien cultures, learned diplomatic protocols, and trained with weapons they hoped never to use. "Sir," said Ensign Kim Jong-un, raising his hand nervously, "I have a question that's been bothering me." "Go ahead, Ensign," Min-ho replied. "Aren't we becoming exactly what we once fought against? We're using fear and superior weapons to control other species. How are we different from the old empires that conquered worlds?" The question hung in the air. Other students shifted in their seats, clearly thinking the same thing. Min-ho walked to the memorial wall that covered one side of the classroom. Carved into black stone were the names of 600 Kithara who had died during the 6 days humanity had hesitated to act. "That's a good question, Jong-un," Min-ho said quietly. And it's one every human soldier should ask themselves regularly. He turned to face the class, his expression serious, but not unkind. We learned something important during the Cathera crisis. Being peaceful doesn't mean being passive. The old galactic order allowed genocide to happen because everyone was too polite, too civilized, too afraid of breaking rules to actually stop evil. Minho activated a holographic display showing the current protection zones. Dozens of star systems where primitive species lived safely under human watch. Look at these worlds, he said. We don't rule them. We don't take their resources. We don't demand they worship us or follow our laws. We simply make sure that no one else can hurt them while they grow strong enough to protect themselves. A young woman in the back row raised her hand. But sir, we do use fear as a weapon. The galaxy is afraid of us now. Yes, Minho agreed, and that fear protects innocent people. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to make them afraid of the consequences. We didn't become conquerors, and we became something the galaxy had never seen before, a species willing to sacrifice our own comfort, our own reputation, even our own moral purity, to protect those who can't protect themselves. Outside the classroom windows, the massive battleship, Eternal Guardian, lifted off from the Mars shipyards, beginning another patrol mission. Its destination was classified, but everyone knew it was heading to check on one of humanity's protected worlds. Across the galaxy, 47 other patrol ships moved through space on similar missions. They were invisible to most sensors, but their presence was felt everywhere. Pirates avoided certain star systems. Slave traders found new careers. Military powers that had once rated primitive worlds now focused their attention on equally advanced opponents. The Galactic Council still met and passed resolutions condemning human actions, but their words carried no weight anymore. The real law of the galaxy was simpler and more effective than any treaty. Harm innocent people, and humanity would find you. In his office on Earth, Ambassador Cho hung the Kithara child's drawing on his wall next to similar gifts from 17 other species. Each one showed the same thing: guardian angels watching over peaceful worlds. Humanity had indeed torn up the old map and drawn new borders. But these borders weren't around territory or resources. They were around every species that needed protection, and they were defended by people willing to be feared so that others could live in peace. For the first time in galactic history, genocide had become impossible.